Welcome, everybody. We're going to call this public caucus to order. Welcome. Tonight we have Dave Trevisani and Ben Anderson from NDC to give us our quarterly update on the parking system in the city of Scranton. So, gentlemen, I'll turn it over to you, and then at the end we'll take questions from the council. Thank you.
Thanks again for being here, or inviting us and having us here. It's our second quarter update meeting to the council. I wanted to take a minute to introduce you to Ben Anderson. Ben is new to NDC in September. Ben is the new Bud. You know Bud Sweet. Bud moved on from NDC and retired from NDC. So Ben will be taking Bud's place and be very active, and you'll see a lot more of Ben here going forward. Today's presentation is very similar to the ones we've had in the past. We'll provide you with a project update. I have a program update that I'd like to make you aware of and make the public aware of and our parkers aware of. And then I'll give you our quarterly financial performance update and where we are with our bondholders. But to get started, I'll turn it over to Ben for the project update.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening to the Scranton City Council, the administration, and members of the public and the press. Thank you for the opportunity to present on CDPS's operations through May 2021. If we're looking at the slide presentation we shared, and on the second slide, we discussed the capital improvements update. As previously reported in the last presentation we gave in the first quarter of 2021, the south side of the Electric City Garage was reopened at the end of last year. However, the north side bordering Spruce was incomplete, and we projected that it would be finished actually this April. However, we were only able to make significant improvements on painting and lighting finishes in May. So we have some remaining items to complete, and they include striping on the upper levels, safety improvements, and sign installation. But beyond that, we're looking ready to open very soon. So on the third slide, you'll see a representation of the ADA compliant striping plan for one of the decks that we'll be putting in place, and you'll see that across all the decks, both on the north side and south side of the Electric City Garage. And then the following slide, the next slide, shows how the deck resurfacing process went. We opened up the roof deck, and now it's completely finished, coated, and repainted. We are currently coordinating with Scranton Tomorrow and Lackawanna County to hold this year's Independence Day fireworks celebration from that roof deck, and be signing the agreement to that effect this week. So it's looking really good up there. The new light posts were installed more recently, and it's safe and has a really fresh look. So the fifth slide is a recap of the sources and uses of construction financing, and only a small portion of this remains to be paid out, including the retainage for construction completion. So we're moving steadily toward reopening all our garages after a lengthy reconstruction and renovation process. Thank you very much. And Dave will continue with the new program he mentioned.
If you could just slide that mic over again.
Yes, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, with the completion of the Electric City Garage, I think we're happy to say that we're just about done with the reconstruction. And I know the public and the parkers have been very patient with us. Construction almost always takes a little bit longer than you expect, but I think we were able to stay on budget. I think we were able to upgrade these garages and give them a long new life, obviously, with your help in the financing. The next slide, maybe a minute on the overall financing for the overall project. We don't have final numbers yet. We're making final payments. We've closed out the state grant, the multimodal grant, and we'll have final numbers here probably in the next few weeks, actually. We'll be sharing those with our bondholders, and we expect to be under budget. Not by a lot, maybe by $100,000 or so, but I think all in all, things went extremely well. So we're really been pleased with the way things have gone. I think I'll start with before I get to the financial update, is an update on an existing program. We've had a program in place for a while now that encourages new parkers to come into the parking system that haven't experienced our parking before. That program provides a 20% discount on the parking rate of $92, and it stays good for 3 months, and then it goes to the regular rate of $92. Now that the garages are completed, and the experience is an upgraded experience, we wanted to, thank everybody for their patience, I was thanking our parkers for their patience, and enhance that program to encourage folks who haven't experienced the parking system to come into the parking system. We know there are folks who might want to be closer to work. We know there are folks who maybe park outside the downtown and walk into work. We know there's folks who maybe have parked outside in maybe a surface lot and walk to work. And we want folks to know that these garages are now finished, they're fully upgraded, they're safe, we have security cameras, we have state-of-the-art equipment. And so to encourage people to try the parking, we wanted to modify this program to provide a 30% discount, so the rate would be $65 to start, and that would be good for 12 months, for a whole year. And that after the 12 months, assuming that they stay, they would go to the regular parking rate at the time of that, in that 13th month. So we just wanted to let folks know that now the construction is about finished, that this may be an opportunity for you to come try the program, and we encourage you to come and ask questions, and ABM has been very professional and very available for questions, so we wanted to just offer a benefit to those folks who wanted to come in and try us new. We'll be marketing this through Scranton tomorrow and some of our other agencies, so, and I think it's a pretty good deal for those of us who haven't parked in the garages before, so I think I encourage folks to try it out. On to our financial highlights. This is a very similar slide that we've talked about in the past. We want to compare our revenue and expenses and NOI against our budget. These are numbers through May. Our revenue is worse than budget by $148,000. We continue to try to manage and stay on line with our expenses. Our expenses are better than budget by $115,000 year to date, and therefore our income, which is available to pay debt service, is worse than budget by $32,000. Now, this is a good sign. When we put our budget in place for 2021, we projected how we expected it to perform. Honestly, we're doing pretty well against budget. The bad news there is we put together a budget in 2021 knowing that we were going to have difficulty due to the pandemic. So we had put together a 2021 budget that showed a $1 million shortfall, meaning not able to pay our full debt payments, our loan payments, but we have been able to project pretty well what it costs to run the system and what we expected in revenue based on what we experienced last year in 2020. So a little bit more granular is the next slide, which again, we show you this format every month. You'll see on the variance slide, the second column to the left, if you have this in front of you, the 148 in revenue below budget, the 115 expense better than budget, and the 32,000 in net income below budget. Now the details are, the good news is things are getting better. On the monthly side, for monthly parking, the numbers aren't as good as last month, and the reason to that is a lot of the college kids are going back home, and we lose those parkers in the summer. So that's why the May numbers are not looking good as last month. But we expect, and we've budgeted for this, that going forward, those numbers will meet budget or be pretty close to budget. Where we've struggled is the transient parking and the meter parking, which is the on-street parking. The transient parking is only $3,000 for the month below budget. That's not bad. That means things are coming back, not as good as we thought, but things are coming back pretty well. The meter parking was quite telling. Last month when we presented, or last quarter when we presented these numbers, or if you looked at April, I should say, we were off by $20,000 for the month of April. This month we're only off budget by $9,000. That's a good sign. That means with the CDC new requirements, with people getting back to the office a little bit, people willing to go out and maybe have dinner and go out at night, that's a good sign for us. Now, will we be back to where we were 2019? I mean, nobody can tell when that exactly happened. But the good news is things are getting better. We're seeing more people come out. More people are going back to work. More people are coming out and parking on the street. So we hope that continues. Now, the budget we put together showed that we were going to have a loss. We expected that, and that's proving out to be true, which causes us the need to work with our lenders on our loan payments. We've had reserves budgeted, we've had reserves funded, we've been using those reserves to pay the loan payment up at this point. We will fully exhaust our reserves next month to make our loan payment. Our next loan payment isn't until January. So these next 6 months will be pretty critical for us to work closely with our lenders and restructure or delay payments until we see the economy come back to where we can afford to make those payments from revenue that we generate from the system. So we've been keeping our bondholders up to speed. We meet regularly with the city team here so that they're aware of where we are. Again, the next 6 months will be very important for us to try to work through and structure our payments that work for where we see us being a year or 2 or 3 years down the road. So I think that really wraps it up. I think in summary, things are getting better, and we continue to monitor the situation. We continue to try to control expenses, and we continue to work with our lenders to, over the next 6 months, get us to a place where we have a budget and a loan payment that works for the system.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Trevisani. I have a couple questions to start off. One of the things that you had mentioned, maybe the last time or the time before when you were in giving us the quarterly update, was the parkers that have outstanding tickets and trying to recoup some of that funding. And one of the things that came out of that discussion was a device, I can't remember the name that was
It's called
used.
a barnacle.
A
right?
barnacle, yeah. It was similar to a boot.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to be used to recoup some of those
Right.
fees from people who just don't pay,
Right,
consistently don't
right.
pay. Can you give us an update on that, and if that is still something that you are considering?
Sure, Councilman, thank you very much. That is something that's very important to us, and it's something that honestly is critical to us for us to be able to run a successful system. I mean, right now, we can issue tickets for people that don't pay, but we don't have a deterrent for them not to not pay, right? So when someone is issued a ticket, that ticket goes, to the magistrate, and then it takes some time for that to become a criminal offense. But our goal is to have a system in place, which is like a boot. It's called a barnacle. It goes on the windshield. That if someone has outstanding tickets and they haven't paid them for a really long time, that allows us to be able to immobilize the car until they pay their fine. We're not doing that to be, mean or disrespectful. It's just if there's not a deterrent, folks just won't pay their tickets. That's just a matter of course, right? That's human nature. But if they know that they might have this inconvenience of having a barnacle or a boot placed on their car, and they have 3 or 4 or 5 outstanding tickets, then they might just, our goal is to get folks to just pay for what they use, right? We don't want to give tickets. We're not in the business to give tickets. It's part of our revenue stream, but we would rather folks just pay for what they use. But it's important for us to be able to have that deterrent so that people will pay for what they use and we don't have to chase them. The update on that is we're working with the parking authority and we're working with the city's law department here to try to move a parking violation from a criminal offense to a civil offense, and that allows us to use the parking authority to adjudicate those if this is the way it goes. But it requires new legislation, so that would ultimately have to come in front of this body. I think that we've made some progress on the details and working with the team, but obviously that's going to have to formally come in front of this body for a vote in order for it to be placed in effect. When we put the system in place in 2016, the rules around enforcing through a booting just didn't exist, or they weren't in place to allow us to boot. It just, once we got operating the system, the legislation wasn't drafted in the way that allowed us to be able to go to that level. This is really fixing that. I mean, that was the intent all along. We just were not able to implement it based on the language in the legislation. So now that'll have to come back in front of this body, and obviously all those details will be shared, and we'll provide that feedback and hopefully get to a point where we can put that in place.
Okay, great, thank you. Could you also give us an update on the retail spaces within the garages and any that are vacant, and how those, I know the pandemic obviously has had an effect, but can you give us a general update on
Yeah,
how those are looking?
I think things have been going very well. I'll turn it over to Ben here, who worked closely with the retail.
Thank you. Only recently, it was just several weeks ago, we signed the final lease for all available spaces within the system. And this was the space off Center Street, nearest to Adams Avenue.
Okay, good. That's great.
Yeah. So that tenant that recently signed is starting a woodworking business, but the two tenants we signed just prior to that were the Catch 21 restaurant at Linden and Washington, North Washington, thank you very much. And then next door, just to that, on Linden, was the hookah bar, Steamtown Hookah. And those businesses are now up and running. We visited Catch 21 tonight and learned that they've been extremely successful in just over a week.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Okay. Then Dave reminds me that there is one vacant space which is currently being used for operations and for storage.
And that's the old Coliseum on Adams
Yes.
Avenue. Okay.
We determined that space was just not marketable because it had a lot of problems, and we cleaned it out. It had mold issues, and we just demoed the interior, and it hasn't been very attractive because it's going to be very expensive to upgrade and get ready. But we're more than willing to talk to someone if there's interest, but there hasn't, so right now we're using it for storage. But that's the only vacant space, so it's good news in a pandemic, so can't be more happy, really.
That's great. Thank you. Does anyone else on council have any questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment and an observation. Just because parking meters are so low, the few times I've been downtown in the last 6 months, I feel like every time I've been down there, I felt that people were especially elderly people, were struggling to use the kiosks. Has that been something that you guys have noticed? And is there anything we could do to try to alleviate that, to give them, I don't know, another option and phone number they could call if they are having trouble with the kiosks?
I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because just before the pandemic, if you remember, the kiosks were relatively new, and we were putting in place training programs. We were about to have a meeting with the business owners. We wanted to expand to what we called our ambassador program. Scranton tomorrow had an ambassador on the street that actually walked around in the busy areas and helped folks who were having some difficulty, because we know this was new. It was going to take folks the time to get used to it and learn how to use the system. And we were about ready to expand that program with new staffing from ABM. Well, then the pandemic hit. So now as business comes back, I think we do want, because folks were having some issues in trying to figure out how to use the system, we wanted to be able to help them understand how to use the system and provide as much support as we can. So between some educational programs, and meetings with the business owners, which we'll expect to have here once things open up a little more, and an expansion of our ambassador program, which has folks on the street actually available as folks are experiencing difficulty to help them use the machines more efficiently. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We do expect to get back on that.
Thank you.
Just this week, the one formal ambassador with Scranton tomorrow, Steve Ward, communicated with me that there was graffiti on a certain kiosk. He addressed some of the functionality issues, and we'll be following up with him. One last thing, several weeks ago, I visited the Electric City Garage to check on progress and was able to see one of the ABM parking enforcement officers helping an elderly person on the street. So our employees are aware of the potential transition for folks using a new system and are catering to their needs when they encounter them on the street.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you for coming in. We appreciate the update, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence and reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, for those who have passed away recently in our community, and for all those suffering due to the pandemic. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Mr. McAndrew? Dr. Rothchild?
Here.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
Mr. Gaughan?
Here, please let the record reflect that Councilman McAndrew had a previous commitment and could not be here tonight.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Councilman Donahue as temporary chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Noes? The ayes have it, and so moved.
I'd also like to make a motion to table item 7A.
Second.
There's been a motion to table agenda item 7A and a second on the question. On the question, 7A, if you look at the agenda tonight, is the resolution authorizing the city to execute and enter into a contract with Avero Advisors to provide business process digitization support to the city for its new operating platform. So council had posed several questions last week. The administration did respond late this afternoon. We haven't really had a chance to go through that response, and then there were additional questions that were raised by Solicitor Hayes in regards to several things. So we're going to table this tonight, and we may introduce it again next week after we review the answers and look to attain additional information. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Noes? The ayes have it, and so moved. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, correspondence received from the mayor dated May 28, 2021, sent to the Auditor General requesting a performance audit of the single tax office. 3B, correspondence received from the Scranton School Board President dated June 4, 2021, sent to the Auditor General in support of a performance audit of the single tax office. 3C, minutes of the City of Scranton Safety Committee meeting held May 3rd, 2021. 3D, minutes of the Ethics Board meeting held April 21st, 2021. 3E, minutes of the Civil Service Commission meeting held May 6, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Voldenberg. Does anyone have any comments on any of the third order items? I just have one comment. 3A is the letter that the mayor had sent to the Auditor General requesting a performance audit of the single tax office, and then 3B is a letter from the school board president, Katie Gilmartin, in support of that. Council received information from the administration in regards to a letter that was sent on June 9th from the Auditor General to Mayor Cognetti, in which he thanks the mayor for her letter and then responds that they have no authority to audit the Scranton Single Tax Office under their primary statutory audit mandates or otherwise. Their authority is strictly limited to taxes that are to be reported and transmitted to the Commonwealth. Anyone else? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
Yes, I have one announcement. So the Green Ridge Neighborhood Association will clean the islands on Caucus and Electric Streets, weather permitting, Saturday morning, June 19th, between 9:30 and noon. Anyone interested in help with the cleanup, if you could bring your own lawn equipment, please. That is all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I have two. So first one is the Mary Mother of God Parish in North Scranton is having their annual block party. It's going to look a little different because of the pandemic. They're going to have a drive-through event that's held at the Holy Rosary Church grounds at 316 William Street, and that's going to be held Friday, June 18th and Saturday, June 19th, 4 to 8 p.m. on both evenings. There's going to be great food and basket raffles. For information and pre-orders, please call 570-342-4881, extension 122, or you can go to www.marymotherofgodparish.org and Mary Mother of God Parish on Facebook or Instagram. And the second announcement that I have is that council, as I mentioned last week, is accepting letters of interest and resumes for those interested in seeking 2 appointments to fill vacant seats on the zoning board, and there are also 2 open seats to be alternate members of the zoning board. So you can send your letters of interest and resumes to Frank Voldenberg, our city clerk, no later than Friday, June 18th, 2021 by 12 noon. You can email them to fvoldenberg, VOLDENBERG at scrantonpa.gov, or by hand delivery U.S. mail at Office of the City Clerk, Municipal Building, 340 North Washington Avenue, 2nd floor, Scranton 18503. And this was advertised in the newspaper twice in this past Sunday. Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizen participation.
Thank you. The first speaker tonight is Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, city resident. I'm happy to announce that the Albright Memorial Library at 500 Vine Street is expanding its hours of operation starting this Sunday, June 20th. It will be open Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and reopening now for Sundays, 1 to 5 p.m. In addition, the library is now accepting donations of gently used books, audiobooks, DVDs, and CDs for its future book sales. The next book sale is scheduled for Saturday, July 10th, right in front of the library on its sidewalk from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Okay, now old business from questions I submitted the last 2 weeks. With regard to my prior questions concerning Leech Creek and its allegedly undersized pipe, do you have any information to report on that situation? You can answer in 5th order. Next, anything to report on the city's dispute with Lackawanna County's Tax Claim Bureau with regard to the collection of delinquent property taxes? Did the city's leadership meet with the county to resolve this issue? And if not, is a meeting scheduled for the future? Next, what is the status of the 2020 audit? Specifically, what is the projected completion date? And how long will the city continue to pay Rainey and Rainey to do the audit prep work? Next, has the city done anything to ensure it complies with all federal and state COVID-19 fund guidelines, like the county has hired an auditor to do that? That's important. And under the category of new business, I applaud Robert Saul of AHT Insurance for his gift of furniture for the mayor's office. Have the details on this gift been forwarded to the Ethics Board to ensure it complies with the city's ethics code? What is the estimated monetary value of the gift, which consists of 8 chairs, 2 tables, 1 bookcase, and 2 coat racks? Remember, all gifts have to be quantified and approved. Next, I was pleased to see that 3 of the city's labor agreements are posted on the city's website. Those are the collective bargaining agreements for the clerical union, the police union, and DPW. In the past, there were 2 additional agreements on the website, one for the single tax office and a memorandum of understanding updating the firefighters' collective bargaining agreement. The Scranton Tax Office document and the firefighters' document are gone. So, Why are the current labor agreements for the single tax office and the firefighters union not posted on the city's website? Also, are personnel in the single tax office now covered by the clerical union's contract? And next, what is the city doing to ensure that future labor agreements comply with the city's ethics code? Or are all the unionized employees, which are more than 90% of the city's workforce, exempt from the code? If you read the code, you will see that it specifically says, in the event of a conflict between the ethics code and collective bargaining agreement, the collective bargaining agreement takes precedence. I see no point in having an ethics code for less than 10% of the workforce. And since the police and fire contracts are in negotiations right now, they expire at the end of this year, that should be addressed so that the two are reconciled and do not conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hodowanitz. Next speaker is Lee Morgan.
Good evening, Council, residents of Scranton. Last week I came here and I spoke about revisiting the Home Rule Charter, and I still haven't received any written response from the Council or the Mayor at this point. And I did present them before COVID hit with a request for such a response. Now, I want the people in the city of Scranton to understand a couple different things, okay? Government represents you, but we have a president of the United States right now who probably isn't capable of performing his job functions as president. And he's tearing the heart out of our country, in my opinion. So I brought two documents with me here today. One is the Constitution of Pennsylvania that I think every resident of Pennsylvania should read and understand. And the other document is the Constitution of the United States. And not only do I think they should read those documents, but I think they should research them and find out how they were written, okay, and what led to the way they were written. Because I think this country has very seriously forgotten its history. I mean, considering that the Democratic Party is off on a tangent where allegedly systemic racism is everywhere, and I guess it's being put to sleep in a lot of places in this country. And I'd just like to remind also the people here that, you know, we have a state that has decided to defend its own border, which is the state of Texas, because we have so many people illegally crossing our border from countries all over the world.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
Just for a second. Can you try to direct your comments towards city business or something?
No, I'm not constrained by that. The court's already ruled on that. And this is city business.
But this, no.
No, this is city business, because anything that happens in America has to do with the city. But if you want city business,
there you go.
Why haven't you responded to my letter in regards to putting the Home Rule Charter on the ballot? Ball's in your court.
I don't remember receiving that letter.
Well, you didn't. It's notarized, and the mayor has one too, so maybe you should have your clerk look for it in your record, because I handed it to you. And my question I have for you is, why shouldn't the residents of this city have a say in the amount of taxation they pay and their government? Because obviously over 30 years, this government hasn't functioned for them. Now, you take a look at all these labor agreements. You know, the police and the fire and the rank and file members of these unions need to ask their pension board, has the city pension fund ever been totally funded, ever in its history? And if it hasn't, how much value has that fund lost over its history? And how much has it cut your benefits? Okay? But now, let's get back to the president. Now, the President of the United States, we're going to name streets after this man, and he won't defend our border. He gets up around the world, he can't remember what he's talking about. I think the major problem we have in this country is that the American people have lost sight on whose country this is, and that government should function for the people, but it doesn't. You know, there's a new statistic. The new statistic is that America has more debt than the whole world combined. So when you look at that and you ask yourself, why isn't the state of Pennsylvania funding the Scranton School District? Because the state constitution says they're obligated to do that. Why are we selling people's homes if the state isn't going to meet its obligation under the Constitution? Why does the council not follow the Home Rule Charter? Why doesn't it want to put it on the ballot and let the residents determine what changes they want to make to the government? But you know what's going to happen? The people are going to have to go out and get signatures, and we're all so concerned about COVID. But you're going to force people to go out and get the signatures they need to put it on the ballot, but yet you say that you represent the residents, but you don't want them to make any changes to the government that represents them. Doesn't make any sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Next speaker is Les Spindler.
Good evening, Council. Les Spindler, city resident. First off, about less than 2 weeks ago, we had our street sign replaced. So I want to thank Councilman Donahue for getting that taken care of. It was the host, they put a whole brand new sign up, so it's really good. Next thing, I wasn't going to come here tonight, but bumped into a neighbor of mine the other day, asked me if I was coming. I said no. I said, but then he told me 2 neighbors parked in front of the house the wrong way for like 5 minutes, and both of them got $25 tickets. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, that happened to me a couple of years ago, and I came and paid it, all in change. And I said to the person, I said, what is wrong with parking in the wrong direction? You know, oh, it's a safety thing, because if you're parked the wrong way, then you got to look both ways. Well, if we're so concerned about safety, why don't they take care of it where the University of Scranton kids park? And Norman Jeffries brought this up a couple weeks ago. Before the pandemic, I worked for over 2 years for CK Auto, and I went up and down Vine Street many times a day. And all the side streets, these kids are parked right up to the corner. And I brought this up before COVID hit, you know, when I came here. They're parked right to the corner, and a couple of years ago, before COVID hit again, I told one of the parking enforcement people from that area, and nothing's been done. I'd go by there, see the same vehicle in the same spot for days, right to the corner. No tickets on the car. So if they're so concerned about safety, work on the hill section by the university. Don't bother the people in Tripp Park that are taxpayers, where these non-tax-paying kids are getting away with murder. That's a safety hazard. Going up and down Vine Street, you're taking your life in your own hands. You have to stop at the stop sign and just edge out, because you can't see, because they're right to the corner. So, you know, let's let and one of these people that just got a ticket, he's one of my neighbors, he's a 40-year fireman. So that's the respect we're showing. Next thing, a few weeks ago I bumped into a city employee. Long story short, this person told me they basically don't have health insurance. I said, what do you mean? They said, well, I have health insurance, but the deductible is $7,000. I said, what? So the person said they basically don't have health insurance because they have a $7,000 deductible. That's ridiculous. How could our city have employees pay the first $7,000 of their health insurance? I don't think any of you up there would be able to do that. It's outrageous. Lastly, Councilman Gaughan, you brought up about the landfill. You said you were disappointed. I hear all these other people saying they're disappointed in it, but nobody has a solution. Where's our garbage going to go if they don't expand the landfill? We're just going to throw it out on the streets? Nobody has a solution. Where do they expect our garbage to go? And I was talking to one of the guys that picks up my garbage every Monday, and he said the same thing. He agreed with me. Where do these people expect our garbage to go to if they don't expand the landfill? Do you have an answer, Councilman Gaughan?
Sure, look at what they do in other parts of the country. Out in California, out west, they're almost down to zero waste. There's ways you can be creative. I'm not saying that it will end tomorrow. You're going to need the landfill certainly for the next few years, but to allow the expansion to go on for decades, the size of the Empire State Building, and we're taking everybody else's trash. I have 4 small children. Do you think I want a landfill to be the symbol for Northeast Pennsylvania, to be the symbol for Dunmore and Scranton in this region? It benefits one family. It does not benefit anybody else in this region. It's time to look at other avenues rather than taking everybody else's trash from out of state and dumping it in our backyard because for it to benefit one family. I think it's outrageous. So I'm not thinking of myself now. Well, you asked me a question.
Maybe we should stop taking garbage from other states. And sending it to California does not sound really feasible.
No, I didn't say send it to California. I said look at what those states are doing with their waste. There are other ways to look at this where we have to look at other avenues rather than just dumping it in our backyard.
All these other people complain. I don't hear them. All they do is complain. I don't hear any solutions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker is John White.
John White, beautiful historic hill. Good evening, doctor and gentlemen. I hope all of hope you and everyone you love is safe and healthy. Excuse me. As I do that, I think of my first point or suggestion, whatever. One of them was, I wonder if we can't have a box of tissues here and a clock there so nobody thinks you're cheating them on time. One with a second hand.
Oh, yeah, we have one right there.
Right there, so I could see it.
Oh, there's one right here. Can you see the one on the dais?
Oh!
There it is.
There would be better.
Okay, well.
Just saying.
Okay.
The road, my avenue hasn't been cleaned, washed, but it's understandable. The paving crews are staging their equipment there, and the avenue is going to be beautiful, actually, Wheeler Avenue. But I hope when it's all done, to keep it beautiful, that it could be cleaned once a week. And again, University of Scranton, I'm sure, if they're watching this tonight, are ready and willing to help the city out to do that if for whatever reason we can't do it on our own. The noise has decreased drastically in the hill where I am. I thank you for that, for whatever intervention you did do. Stipp Court is looking good. It looks like the neighbors there are keeping it clean, and that's a good thing. It seems to me like most of our speakers speak about macro issues, budgets, policies, all that stuff. I tend to look at micro issues, individuals, neighborhoods, stuff like that. So what I consider a dangerous situation at Wyoming and Lackawanna continues. The little green man, little white man, whatever color he is, comes up for pedestrian crossing, but going south on Lackawanna Avenue, you can make a left. And I think I told you a few weeks ago, I picked a woman up that she wasn't hit, but she was frightened and went down. And the guy just kept on going. And I did mention on Jefferson and Linden There's an automatic little white man that comes up in the crosswalk, and you could jaywalk, you could dance across if you wanted to, and students do dance in their jaywalking situation. It's kind of fun to watch, and it's safe. It's safe. Wyoming and Lackawanna isn't. Geez, I guess I don't have anything else tonight. Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Keep well and safe, and if I could yield time to the next person, I would do that. I don't think I could, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night. Next speaker is Ron Ellman.
Ronnie Ellman, Council, also known as Fat Ronnie lately. I ran into the mayor downstairs, the first time I ever seen her. She's a pleasant lady. You know, in the paper last Friday was a advocation, I guess you could say, of reassessment. It was devoid of the facts. I think it was misleading. As I've said and people said before me, the only reason for reassessment is to raise taxes, period. It gives a false impression to what the city's worth, and we already were told there's like $2 billion from Gerald Cross. He never upped it since he made that statement last year. You know, reassessment, like I said before, it's only going to hurt minorities, poor, what we could consider lower income neighborhoods. And soon as one of these LLCs takes over a property, there's your decline of the whole neighborhood. You can go down Wayne Avenue and see it. A year ago, well, a little over a year ago, on Wayne and School Street was an apartment building. I don't know how many of you know where Wayne is, but I take it a lot of times to go to Parker Street. A year ago, this building looked nice. Now it's loaded up with really low caliber people. It looks like a dump out front. There's junk cars and a boat. This is what happens to every single neighborhood. These LLCs are getting away with murder in the city. And they live on loopholes. They thrive on loopholes. And you people are in a position to end it. You know, there's LLCs buy a property and they drag things out for a year or two while it's rented, and the rest of us have to pay our money. And this needs to be challenged somehow. I don't know the legalities, but it can be stopped. And I'd like to say one other thing real quick. I was talking to a Taylor policeman at the Price Chopper in Taylor Saturday or Sunday, and he told me you can still get a free gun lock. There isn't an excuse in the world for these children or anyone being injured or worse when you can get a free gun lock, and it ought to be some kind of city or state law that they have to have a gun lock on these pistols. One other thing. I was at the dollar store a couple of weeks ago with my old wooden cane that I've had, I don't know, over 10 years, and I noticed it wasn't in my basket. So Rosie went to the cashier, and the cashier said, a senior lady, I should say, walked out with it under her arm. No, what kind of lowlife would steal somebody's cane? It couldn't have fallen out of the basket, but now it's sort of funny, but it was, at the time I was really, it just makes you wonder about people sometimes. And about the guns, I know there's some kind of law requiring them, needed. You know, we hear about this all the time, almost every day, about an accidental shooting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman. Mr. Voldenberg, can you track down Mr. Ellman's cane for next week? Thank you. Kidding.
I'll look into it, Mr.
Thank you. David Dobson, next speaker.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson, resident taxpayer. Last week we got off on trash fees, and I seem to have had trouble finding ordinances and stuff. I'll handle that later. I'll have to go back online. But in other words, will these trash fees for this year fall due next year with our property taxes? Is that how it's? So you're actually paying them a year later? And
No, you're paying them in the current year. They just come on your tax bill instead of in a separate bill.
Uh-huh. Well, I paid my taxes and I didn't notice any difference. Maybe I didn't. I'll have to research it. Okay. But anyway, the $300 or a little less if you pay early or whatever is actually a steal, and I agree with you 1,000% on the New York trash and New Jersey trash. I had a New Yorker move next door to me, and he was just a working class dude, and he asked me about recycling, and I told him, well, you have to take it out the front, and we have like 32 steps to our front door. So I put it in the trunk and take it around, and I'm not doing that. Okay. So you're not doing that, so we're stuck with it, I guess. I'd like to see people forced to recycle. I'd love to see it. We don't do it, and I know we were talking about our school system earlier. Well, our school system seemed to run into trouble with a certain Republican governor, Corbett. That's when the extra money stopped flowing in, along with our Republican legislature. And I think I read something about a court case to get that money back on the agenda, because we have an underfunded school system, granted, but we're supposed to be getting a lot more money than what we do. And, okay, this is concerning Scranton, because eventually these laws are going to leach in. Mastriano from Pennsylvania was out to Arizona to check out the fraud. And you have these uncertified and unauthorized people playing with voting machines, and they want to start this in Pennsylvania, bring it to Pennsylvania. The cyber ninjas. And by the way, once they tamper with those machines, they have to be replaced. So if they did that in our county, and they already did under Giuliani in one county in Pennsylvania, that county has to buy brand new voting machines. So it's not like it doesn't cost you. And there's a new line I have. It's called Call Your Senator Daily. It's free, 888-453-3211. And when you hang up after the first call, if you call back, they put you to the other senator. So first I got Casey, the next one I got Toomey, and I advised both of them gently to please act in the American way. I know Casey would be all for that. The other numbers are 202-224-3121, and that's probably just takes your address, your zip code, and the 202-225-3121, that you could possibly ask for other senators from other states, and it's time to apply some pressure to Mr. Manchin. He has people from Texas marching to his headquarters yesterday. And we all, with this racial teaching and so forth, I'm all for it. We need to study, because back in the 1800s, no working class was treated very much better than the slaves. If you wanted to move from the colliery, you paid your bill. If you didn't pay your bill, you went to prison. At the company store. I owe my soul. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Would anyone else like to address council that exhausts the sign-in sheet?
Tom Coyne. Unfortunately, one of the people who is addressing council has left the body. One of the interesting things when it comes to the Home Rule Charter is whenever I have questions or don't know anything about the Home Rule Charter in particular, all I need to do is pick up a phone. My mother actually was one of the few people who were present and instituted the Home Rule Charter. And the major question with the Scranton's Home Rule Charter was the difference on how this government would be run, whether it would be a mayor and city council as a representative or the equivalent of the county commissioners. Just a different structure of whether or not we would have the equivalent of a cross-checking on bodies, legislative and a executive, or whether we would have commissioners who would come in there and be voted in for terms who would run the entire organization. So the main push of the Home Rule Charter back then was to define what type of governing body would best represent the residents of the city of Scranton. And in doing that, we have to take a look at how this body has represented the city of Scranton compared to how the county commissioners, with their taxing and laws and what they have done to the county in a whole, has represented the same population. So part of the evaluation on the Home Rule Charter, look at both parts of the ruling bodies that you have present. Do you want to have county commissioners similar to city commissioners, similar to Lackawanna County, then change the Home Rule Charter? If that's not working, then it's something other than just the Home Rule Charter. I've yet to see a street sweeper back in my neighborhood, period. I've watched and my security camera gets the trash trucks every Tuesday and recycling, but I've yet to see a street sweeper come down there. Landfill. I've sent to council beforehand about both a clean incineration and plasma gasification. There are solutions. They are expensive. They turn our trash into energy. They wind up providing pretty much the amount of energy that we put in trash comes back in electricity, and we're not filling up landfills. There are solutions out there that can get us out of that, and actually by making a larger plant, we could start taking trash from surrounding counties because we would have excess and start making a revenue stream for the city. There are places that have put this in place who are now making, not only emptied their landfills, but are increasing the revenue stream for the city. Parking. The parking tickets for directional are being enforced wrong. We had them on our block, and I actually questioned the parking authority lady, and she said it was based on the parking direction was based on state law. The state code actually reflects that you have to park in the direction of traffic. Many of these streets are bidirectional because they are too small. There is no direction of traffic. Specific directional parking is for Pittston Avenue, where you have 2 lanes or 2 one-way streets to not go against it. When you have 1 lane in the center that is bidirectional, there is no parking against traffic. The delay in sending paperwork down for the positions in Scranton? Simple. Mayor delays you for 3 weeks, deny the job. Gone. You don't want to send it for approval? We've unapproved it. Find someone else, and that would stop the delay, because if jobs were cut, it would stop it. Last, Harry Potter always uses the you-know-who or he who must not be named. The landfill with DeNaples. DeNaples' name is hardly ever brought up. Also, Scranton Salt, the land plot, which is the Bacon Colliery, whose CSY Incorporated is also DeNaples. Looking at that, there is a back way out of there. It's more expensive, and it doesn't have to go through the neighborhood in West Scranton. You can actually run a road off Taylor Avenue to Depot Street to North Main Street, and the city owns the property at the Lackawanna Trail that would have to put the easement on the train track corner to provide access. It would cost DeNaples and the Salt more money, but that exit is there, and it would stop bridges, it would stop houses being impacted.
Thank you.
It's a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Quinn. Would anyone else like to address council? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A, motions.
Councilman Schuster, do you have any motions or comments tonight?
No, nothing at this time.
Thank you. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments at this time?
Yes, I just have 2 quick updates. The first being the trucks that I spoke about that were parked on South Washington Avenue for several months, those are no longer there, so I want to thank the SPD for their help in that. And the other thing, I hadn't mentioned it here yet, but I did inquire about the old Vine Street station that's in the hill section on Vine and Prescott, and I pass by it frequently. It's been closed for a number of years and is a blighted property, and I wanted to take a look into that, and we received a response that that's something that the DEP is actually addressing because of some environmental issues. So I'll continue to update the public on that piece of property as I receive more information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Donahue, any motions or comments?
Yes, just briefly, one of the answers for Joan's questions regarding the audit that we got back, in terms of what is the status to the 2020 audit, the response we got back from Carl Deely was that the 2020 audit preparations are currently in work. We anticipate completion in September. The city finance team will meet with our auditors, Kohansky, later this month to agree on the specific timeline for the 2020 audit publication. And in terms of your second question, is the city still paying Rainey and Rainey to do audit prep work? If so, why? The answer was yes. Rainey and Rainey continue as our audit prep support, and the city does not have the capacity to complete this work internally. Those were the answers that were provided to us to your questions regarding the audit. Mr. Hayes, in terms of Mr. Coyne's point about bidirectional streets and state law, would we be able to look into that? Because that is an interesting theory, but what I guess regulates how we enforce our parking enforcement? Is it a city law or is it the state law? Thank you. And I would just like to say to Mr. White, I wish we were able to have the street cleaners come out every week. I wish we were able to have the street cleaners come out every week, but we only have 3 street cleaners in the city. That's an upgrade from a couple of years ago where we only had 1. I'll talk to you about street cleaning after the meeting, okay? And then, Mr. Ellman, if you were to provide addresses for the properties or even the 100 block that you see these issues on, please provide them for us, and then maybe we could get them taken care of. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Donahue. I have quite a few items tonight. And the first one, I just want to mention the rules of council. So Article 5, under Regulations in Council, it states, any person authorized to address council shall be limited to speaking exclusively on matters of concern to the council that are contained in 3rd, 5th, 6th, or 7th order of the meeting agenda, and may speak on non-agenda items of concern to the council. Now, I try to be as fair as possible in running these meetings, and I don't really, I don't want to be heavy-handed. Everyone has their opinions. But I will gavel speakers out of order if they stray too far from what is of concern to this council, which is national political issues that don't have anything to do with council. There are different forums for that. This is not one of them, and I don't really want to get into debating immigration, abortion, the death penalty. It doesn't have, unless you can somehow tie it to city business, I will be enforcing Article 5 of the council rules. The second thing I wanted to address tonight, and Councilman Donahue and I spoke about this last week, was the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's June 3rd approval of Keystone Sanitary Landfill's application to expand its facility in our county. This approval, as we know, will allow Keystone to continue to accept out-of-state trash for the next 4 decades, 40 years. That means that for the next 4 decades, the city of Scranton will have over 100,000 gallons of leachate per day running under our neighborhoods. That means that for over the next 4 decades, over 3.5 million gallons, that's the equivalent of the contents of over 5 Olympic-sized swimming pools of leachate per month, will flow through and be discharged in a facility in South Scranton. As the elected officials who are entrusted to represent the residents of Scranton, I believe very strongly that we have an obligation to determine whether the process for approving Keystone's expansion application was appropriate and conformed to the law. We know for certain that the Department of Environmental Protection ignored the overwhelming opposition to this expansion from the residents of the host municipalities and the many, many public officials elected to represent them. We know that the Pennsylvania Environmental Hearing Board has already determined that the DEP has not consistently exercised vigorous oversight of the landfill consistent with its regulatory and constitutional responsibilities, with just as much concern about the rights of the landfill's neighbors as the rights of the landfill. We know that DEP has failed us, and now it's time that we know why they failed us. In light of this, I will now make a motion that City Council send a written request to the Pennsylvania Department of Auditor General to conduct a performance audit of the Department of Environmental Protection's process for approving the expansion permit application of the Keystone Sanitary Landfill.
Second.
On the question? In addition to my comments, I hope that other municipalities in Lackawanna County will join us in this request. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion passes. Thank you. I just want to check through a couple of citizens' complaints. I've actually gotten quite a few in the last few days. One of these, we've already been in contact with the police department, but I'd like to circle back around, Frank, if we could. The woman reached out to me today. 728 Brook Street. This woman was denied a handicap parking pass. Now, she does have a parking lot. There's parking in the back of her home, but there's a hill. She has cancer. She can't get up it. It's tough to get up there in the winter, and she does have a legitimate medical issue. So we did ask the chief of police if there was any sort of recourse for this woman to appeal the decision by the police department, and the police department is just following the rules. And I'm not saying that they did anything wrong, but we are just asking for clarification to try to help this woman. So if you could just circle back around with them, Frank, and see if they came to any conclusion on that. We got a call about 2309 Rockwell Avenue, dangerous trees in the city right-of-way that this gentleman believes should come down. So if we can contact Tony Santoli and Don King on that. There is also trees at 740 Cherry Street that are on city property that were planted years ago, I believe by the city, and they're ripping up sidewalks, and they've become really dangerous. So if we could also include that in the request to Mr. Santoli and Mr. King. 1642 Sanderson Avenue is a property that I've gotten complaints about over the years since I've been on council. Received a complaint again from several neighbors out there. Drug deals, blight issue, garbage in the yard. So, Mr. Voldenberg, if we could send that over to the police department and licensing and inspections as well. One of the questions that I'd like to ask tonight of the Parks and Recreation Department is we made sure to put $50,000 in an account in the Park and Recreation budget for casual employees to help cut grass and maintain the parks during the summer. This is a program that was instituted years ago in the DPW and Parks and Recreation Department, and I don't believe that this year it's been instituted. I don't know that those funds have been used, and I'd like to know why. That's the whole reason that we put the money in the budget, and I do think that would be worthwhile. So, Mr. Voldenberg, if you can reach out to the DPW and Parks and Rec Department and get an explanation on that. Also, I asked last week for a complete update on the Meadowbrook Creek project. We did not receive that yet. I'm hoping that we do by next week. Neighbors are calling me and asking, and I know they reached out to Councilman Schuster and Councilman Donahue as well, why their properties and their backyards are still in disrepair and when they're going to be repaired. They obviously, anyone would not want to go through the whole summer with your backyard ripped up. So if we could get an answer on that, I would appreciate it. And then, Mr. Voldenberg, if you could reach out to Charlene Doyle from the Pennsylvania Northeast Regional Railroad Authority. There are several people and groups that want to do a cleanup of the area near the railroad and down on the Olive Street underpass, but they want to make sure that they have permission first. I spoke about this back in May. There is an area, if you're traveling from Scranton High School, right before you get under the bridge, if you look to your right, there is just a dumping ground for garbage. We actually traveled up above that where the railroad is, and I've never seen so much garbage in my life. It's definitely a hazard. So we just need to find out who we can get permission from to get that cleaned up. We did get a response from the Department of Environmental Protection. It will be in third order next week. There are pages and pages of documents that were provided regarding the flooding on Leggett's Creek and Leach Creek, Leggett Street, and specifically the woman who lives on Yard Avenue, who I'm in touch with quite frequently. I'm going to ask Mr. Voldenberg to set up a meeting between myself, anyone else on council who wants to be involved, and all of the neighbors who were affected by the flooding. I'd like DPW and DEP to be involved, Mr. Voldenberg, so that we can all get on the same page. There seems to be conflicting information, and I just want to make sure that gets taken care of. And I do have the names and addresses and numbers of all the neighbors who were involved. And as it pertains to the pipe, that's still an outstanding question. When you look at the documents next week, Ms. Hodowanitz, you'll see that the DEP is saying one thing and the city is saying another thing, so it's not really clear what they're going to do with that. I know they have until June 30th to come up with a plan to fix the issues that DEP identified in their notice of violation. In that vein, wait for the ambulance to go by. We did get a note from Mr. Priambo, the DPW director. He actually called me late this afternoon, but I was rushing to get down here, so I didn't have a chance to call him back, but that he was going to respond to my request for information regarding the flooding in these areas. One of the things that I requested from DPW was just a roadmap of what work has been done and what work are they planning on doing. So he said he's waiting on some documentation from Labella Associates, and then he will provide an answer, and that'll be put in third order. There were several other things that I wanted to touch on tonight that residents had asked about. One of them was Bedrock Technology. That's the company that the city had entered into under a contract the city entered into under an emergency declaration. So again, I can't remember who asked these questions, but one of the questions was how many team members are currently assigned by Bedrock to our IT department. Mr. Dealey responded there are currently 7 Bedrock staff assigned to city support. The other question was what was the ending date to the Bedrock service contract, and he stated that the current contract will expire in August 2021. And one of the last question was, are any duties presently performed by Bedrock, can they be handled by city IT employees? His response was the city has the capability for a subset of Tier 1 support at this time, hardware install and replacements, user access, and software installs. So that was his response to those questions. One of the issues that I had raised was regarding DPW overtime in the administration. And my concern there really stemmed from a look back at budgets since I've been on council since 2014. From 2015 to 2019 and years before that, there was hardly any money ever budgeted for overtime in the DPW administration account. In 2020, when the Cognetti administration took over, there was only $250 which was budgeted. $5,861.91 was spent. This year, to date, there's been almost $8,000 that have been spent in overtime. We only budgeted, I think, $2,250. We're on track now, if you cost it out, to spend almost $20,000 on overtime in DPW administration. So I had asked the DPW why that was that we're spending that much money. You know, when council approves a budget, and we made several changes to the budget, we would expect that the departments would try their best to live within the means that we set. And for the department to just blatantly go thousands of dollars over, and we're not even in July yet, I don't believe that there's any excuse for that. Now, Mr. Priambo did respond, and I want to read his response into the record. He said, the reason for overtime being charged in DPW administration is not due to a new policy or a change in policy. However, it is due to filling an open position and the hiring of a fleet services supervisor in August of 2020. Prior to this hiring, the department did not benefit from a position that would supervise auto service staff and provide management support for our fleet equipment services, inventory, and supplies within the DPW complex and operations. It has been historical with operations in DPW to have foreman supervisors work overtime when the operational staff is on duty providing public services. I have to question that statement because, as I just stated here, there has been, as far as I can see, there was no money spent on supervisors in the DPW. So I don't know, I still don't understand why we're doing this in the amount that we're doing it. He also states that the fleet services supervisor is no exception and has been cross-training in other operations in order to cover for vacations and other absences. The department is a 24/7 on-call service for weather emergencies, and supervisors rotate for off-hour coverage. The department also works 11 scheduled Saturdays per year due to holidays. I requested a breakdown of the overtime by employee in this department. I still have an issue with this. I do plan on speaking to Mr. Priambo and the mayor about it. Again, as I stated, if we're going to pass a budget and we're going to set an account at a certain amount and they're just going to ignore it, then why are we up here and what are we doing? We set it at an amount, they've blown through the budget, and we're not even, we're almost halfway through the year. So it doesn't make sense, still does not make sense to me. The next thing I had was a resident had asked about Portnoy Law Associates and a question about their performance to date. We did get a response from Mary Jo Sheridan. She reported that the City of Scranton's Treasury Bureau collected $609,321 in delinquent refuse fees from January 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2021. For the same period last year, NRS collected $509,225. She also stated that city officials met with Portnoy reps last week, and this email was June 11th, to finalize the transition to Portnoy taking over collections. She also stated that the timing of the transition has been impacted by the need for additional data and information from NRS. They are anticipating receiving the information they need by next week, and they'll let us know as soon as Portnoy takes over collections officially. As for the letters of interest and resumes for the zoning board, as I mentioned at the top of the meeting, we did receive 3 letters of interest and resumes. You have until Friday at 12 noon to get them to Mr. Voldenberg, as I stated in the beginning of the meeting. So anyone out there who's interested and wants to serve on a board, this is a great opportunity, and I would recommend that you do that, and it would be very helpful to the council. And that's all I have this week. Thank you.
5B for introduction, a resolution amending Resolution Number 47, 2011, entitled Authorizing, Empowering, and Directing the Mayor and Other Appropriate City Officials to Appoint Liaisons between the City of Scranton and Berkheimer, the duly appointed collector of earned income tax for the Lackawanna County Tax Collection District, for the express purpose of sharing confidential tax information with the district for official purposes, to update City of Scranton representatives authorized to receive confidential tax information.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I did ask Mr. Hayes to look in, or to check with the administration during caucus to see if we should do this just by position and not include people's names. Therefore, it would just be, that position has the ability to represent the city in terms of any interaction with Berkheimer.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? We are required to do this per Act 511. Act 511 mandates actually mandates Berkheimer to transmit confidential tax information to the municipality. We have to appoint certain people to entertain that information. So as Councilman Donahue said, they are going to appoint Larry West, the business administrator, Mary Jo Sheridan, the city treasurer, Rebecca McMullen, the finance manager, and Adam Joyce, the city senior accountant. Anyone else on the question?
Other than the fact that this would make sense based on those positions.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction, a resolution accepting the gift of office furniture from AHT Insurance, including but not limited to 8 chairs, 2 tables, 1 bookcase, and 2 coat racks for the office of the mayor.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I mentioned it in caucus tonight about sending this over to the ethics board. It is stated that written assessment for gifts of value is required, and we did get it in public comment tonight to have this gift quantified, so I do think that'd be a good idea.
Thank you. Anyone else on the question? And I would also like to know, this is being gifted from AHT Insurance, and a gentleman is mentioned in here as well, Robert Saul. So I think we should find out where they're located, who this gentleman is in relation to AHT Insurance, and how this arrangement came about. But I'm glad to see it on the agenda and it being out in the open. Anyone else? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
Of West Lackawanna Avenue over Norfolk Southern from the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission.
Thank you. At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution reappointing Robert Gattens, 528 Orchard Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, for an additional 5-year term as a member of the Zoning Hearing Board for the City of Scranton. Mr. Gatton's term will expire on July 1st, 2021. Mr. Gatton's new term will commence on July 2nd, 2021, and expire on July 1st, 2026.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I'd just like to thank Mr. Gattens for the service that he's already put into the zoning board, and I'm happy to see that he's interested in being reappointed, and I'm excited to vote for him tonight.
Thank you. I would agree. Mr. Gattens has done a really nice job on the zoning board representing the city, and he wears a lot of hats within the city, doing a ton of work up at Nayok Park on the recreation board, a lot of programs that he's instituted up there, and thank him for his service. Anyone else? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Sixth order, no business at this time. Seventh order, 7B, for consideration by the Committee on Public Safety for adoption, Resolution Number 174, 2021, authorizing the mayor and other appropriate city officials to execute and enter into a lease agreement with Horsepower Harley-Davidson, Inc. for the lease of 4 new 2021 police package motorcycles for the City of Scranton Police Department for a period of 1 year from June 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2022.
What is the recommendation of the temporary chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety?
As temporary chairperson for the Committee on Public Safety, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second?
On the question? Roll call, please.
Yes?
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, old business. File of the council number 72 of 2021 was unanimously approved by council after 3 readings at its public meeting on June 8, 2021. In order to comply with the legal notice requirements under the Local Government Unit Debt Act, legal notice was published in the Scranton Times-Tribune on Saturday, June 12, 2021.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final enactment of file of the Council Number 72 of 2021 in order to satisfy the requirements of the Local Government Unit Debt Act.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes?
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Gaughan?
Yes, I hereby declare the file of the Council number 72 of 2021 has been approved for final enactment under the Local Government Unit Debt Act. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.